This is not just another morning. This is Friday, May 1, 2026, a divine turning point, a prophetic gateway into a brand new month. And I need you to hear me clearly. Every plan the enemy whispered, every trap that was set in secret, every assignment formed against your destiny, today we confront it and today we cancel it by fire. I feel a spiritual urgency in this moment because the beginning of a month is not neutral. It is a battlefield of decisions, declarations, and dominion. What you permit now can follow you, but what you cancel now cannot survive. And I declare that you did not stumble into this prayer by accident. You were summoned by purpose, positioned by divine orchestration to take authority over May before May tries to take authority over you. Some of you came into this new month carrying residue from the last delays, disappointments, silent battles nobody knows about. But I came with an assignment to tell you that it ends here. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. Because when you open your mouth in alignment with heaven, you don't beg for victory, you enforce it. There are plans that were written against your name, plans of stagnation, plans of confusion, plans designed to wear you out slowly, but we are not negotiating with darkness today. We are issuing a cancellation notice in the spirit realm. And when God backs your words, no force can override your authority. I need you to understand something. Warfare is not noise, it is precision. It is knowing who you are, knowing what belongs to you, and refusing to allow anything unauthorized to remain. And this morning we step into that precision. We speak with clarity, we move with power, we stand with confidence. Before we go deeper, I want you to do something powerful, like this video and subscribe to this channel for daily prayer as a prophetic act of faith. Because when you align your actions with expectation, you signal to heaven that you are ready for consistency, ready for breakthrough, ready for divine interruption in your life. I sense that some of you have been targeted because of what you carry, your potential, your calling, your future impact. But hear me, what God placed inside of you is not vulnerable, it is guarded. And today we reinforce that covering. We strengthen that hedge. We declare that no evil plan will survive this new month. This is not the month you shrink back. This is the month you rise with authority. This is the month you walk into rooms with confidence, knowing that every unseen battle has already been addressed in the spirit. You are not reacting, you are ruling. So right now, I want you to make a bold prophetic move. Open the comment section and type, "Every evil plan is canceled this month," not as a routine, but as a declaration that echoes beyond the screen into realms where decisions about your life are being contested and overturned. This new month is not something I drift into casually. It is something I step into intentionally, with awareness, with spiritual clarity, with a deep knowing that time itself can be governed by what I declare and what I align with. Friday, May 1, 2026 is not just a date on a calendar. It is a doorway, a prophetic entrance, a moment designed by God where decisions in the spirit can shape outcomes in the natural. And I refuse to enter this month passively. I refuse to carry over what God never assigned to me. I refuse to give permission to anything that does not belong to my destiny. I step in with authority, not arrogance but alignment, not fear but faith, not confusion but clarity, knowing that when I move in agreement with heaven, heaven moves in agreement with me. I become aware in this moment that beginnings matter, that what is spoken at the start can echo throughout the days that follow, that what is established now can either empower me or limit me. And so I slow my spirit, I quiet every internal distraction, and I position myself in divine awareness. I recognize that there are plans that exist in realms I cannot see, whispers of intention that were not sent by God, strategies formed in darkness that attempt to influence my path, but I am not unaware, I am not unprepared, and I am not unprotected. Because I carry the authority that comes from being aligned with God, and I choose to exercise that authority right now. I declare that I am not entering May as a victim of circumstance. I am entering as a steward of purpose. I do not wait for things to happen to me. I establish what is allowed to happen through me and around me. Every plan that was written without divine approval, every agenda that was formed outside of God's will, every intention that seeks to derail, distract, or diminish what God has placed inside of me, I confront it at the entrance of this month. I do not negotiate with it. I do not entertain it. I cancel it. I release a divine interruption into every unseen plan. And I declare that what was formed in darkness cannot survive in the light of God's authority. The word reminds me in Isaiah 54, 17, that no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And I do not read that as passive comfort. I receive it as active authority. That means even if something was formed, even if something was designed, even if something was prepared, it will not succeed, it will not advance, it will not complete its assignment. And I align myself with that truth right now. I declare that every weapon loses its power, every scheme loses its influence, every plan loses its access. I stand under divine covering, and I walk into this month with a shield that cannot be penetrated and a confidence that cannot be shaken. I recognize that authority is not about volume. It is about alignment. It is not about how loud I speak. It is about how deeply I believe. And so I settle into a calm, steady, unwavering posture. I am not rushing. I am not anxious. I am not reacting. I am responding from a place of identity, knowing who I am and whose I am. And from that place, I release declarations that carry weight in the spirit. I declare that this month will not be shaped by fear. It will not be influenced by confusion. It will not be governed by negativity. It will be shaped by purpose, influenced by divine wisdom, and governed by the presence of God. There may have been things that tried to follow me from the previous month, patterns that attempted to repeat, cycles that attempted to continue, but I draw a clear line at this entrance. What does not belong to my future cannot cross into my present. What was assigned to hinder me cannot continue to accompany me. I release every residue, every weight, every unseen attachment that tries to linger, and I step forward lighter, clearer, freer. I do not carry what God has already broken. I do not entertain what God has already canceled. I do not revisit what God has already closed. The word declares in Revelation 3:8 that God sets before me an open door that no one can shut, and I hold on to that promise as I enter this month. That means access is already granted, opportunities are already positioned, pathways are already prepared. And if God has opened it, no opposing force can close it. So I align my expectation with that truth. I do not enter this month expecting resistance. I enter expecting alignment. I do not anticipate obstacles. I anticipate opportunities. I do not prepare for defeat. I prepare for manifestation. There is a calm confidence rising within me, a quiet strength that does not need to prove itself, but simply knows. I know that I am covered. I know that I am guided. I know that I am positioned. And because of that, I move differently. I think differently. I speak differently. I no longer give energy to what I have already canceled. I no longer give attention to what no longer has authority. I focus on what God is doing, on what God is establishing, on what God is releasing in this new month. And even now, I sense that something is shifting, something is aligning, something is being reordered in ways I may not fully see yet, but I can feel. There is a divine rearrangement happening, a repositioning that is setting me up for what is ahead. And I remain in agreement with that process. I do not resist it. I do not question it. I flow with it because I trust that God's timing, God's order, and God's intention for my life is always greater than anything that tries to oppose it. If this resonates with your spirit, if you are stepping into this new month with the same authority and alignment, I want you to take a moment and open the comment section and type, "I entered this move with authority." Let that be your personal declaration, your written agreement, your visible act of faith that seals what you are believing for and positions you to witness what God is about to establish in your life. I continue to stand in this awareness that this moment matters, that this declaration carries weight, that this alignment has consequences in the best possible way. I am not just speaking words. I am setting direction. I am not just praying. I am establishing order. I am not just hoping. I am declaring with confidence that every evil agenda is canceled, every unauthorized plan is denied, and every step I take in this month is covered, guided, and aligned with divine purpose. I become aware in this moment that delay is not always loud. It is often subtle, patient, and persistent, attempting to slow progress in ways that are almost unnoticeable at first. It disguises itself as timing issues, as missed opportunities, as doors that almost opened but didn't fully release. But I refuse to accept delay as my portion in this new month. I refuse to normalize stagnation. I refuse to make peace with cycles that keep me in the same place, and I refuse to carry forward any pattern that was never authorized by God. I step into this moment with clarity, recognizing that forward movement is my inheritance, that progress is my portion, and that anything attempting to restrict that must be confronted and canceled. There are things that tried to slow me down before, Moments where I felt like I was moving but not advancing, trying but not breaking through, pushing but not progressing. And I acknowledge those experiences without allowing them to define my expectation. Because what was does not determine what will be. I draw a clear boundary between past limitations and present authority. I release every agreement I may have unconsciously made with delay, every thought that told me to wait when God said move, every hesitation that held me back when purpose was calling me forward. I break alignment with stagnation and I realign myself with acceleration. The word reminds me in Habakkuk 2:3 that though the vision tarries, it will surely come, it will not delay. And I receive that not as a distant promise, but as a present reality. That means what God has spoken over my life is not subject to indefinite postponement. It is not at the mercy of circumstances. It is not dependent on external approval. It is anchored in divine timing, and divine timing is precise, intentional, and unstoppable. So I align myself with that precision. I refuse to interpret waiting as denial, and I refuse to interpret delay as defeat. I recognize that what God has set in motion is still in motion, and I step into agreement with its fulfillment. I declare that every hidden plan of delay is exposed and dismantled. Every unseen force attempting to slow my progress loses its influence. Every pattern of stagnation that has tried to establish itself in my life is broken at its root. I do not negotiate with it. I do not tolerate it. I do not allow it to linger. I release a decisive cancellation into every delay that has tried to follow me, and I declare that it has no place in this new month. I move forward with clarity, with confidence, and with an awareness that progress is not something I chase, it is something I walk in. There is a shift happening within me, a recalibration of expectation, a renewal of mindset. I no longer expect things to take longer than they should. I no longer anticipate resistance at every step. I no longer prepare myself for disappointment as a default. I align my thinking with the nature of God, who is not slow, who is not uncertain, who is not hesitant. And as I align my thinking, my experience begins to align as well. I step into a flow where things begin to move, where doors begin to open, where connections begin to form, where opportunities begin to present themselves in ways that reflect divine order rather than human limitation. The word declares in Joel 2:25 that God will restore the years that the locust has eaten, and I hold on to that restoration as I move forward. That means nothing was wasted. Nothing was lost beyond recovery. Nothing was taken beyond redemption. Every delay, every setback, every moment that felt like it was slipping away is now being gathered into a process of restoration, and I step into that restoration with expectation. I do not look back with regret. I look forward with confidence, knowing that what is being restored will not only return, but will come back with increase, with multiplication, with acceleration. I become intentional about how I move in this season. I do not rush, but I do not hesitate. I do not force, but I do not hold back. I move with a steady, consistent, focused energy that is aligned with purpose. I pay attention to what God is highlighting. I respond to what God is initiating, and I trust the process that God is unfolding. I am no longer distracted by what is not working. I am focused on what is aligning. I am no longer discouraged by what has not happened yet. I am encouraged by what is already in motion. There is also a release happening in my spirit, a letting go of frustration, a releasing of impatience, a surrendering of the need to control timing. Because I understand that true acceleration does not come from striving, it comes from alignment. When I am aligned with God's will, things move the way they are supposed to move. And so I rest in that alignment even as I move forward. I am active but not anxious, engaged but not overwhelmed, focused but not pressured. I carry a calm confidence that knows things are unfolding exactly as they should. I also recognize that momentum builds through consistency, through small intentional steps taken in the right direction. And so I commit to showing up, to moving forward, to taking action even when it feels simple, even when it feels small, because I understand that every step taken in alignment contributes to a greater flow of progress. I do not wait for perfect conditions. I move with present clarity. I do not wait for everything to make sense. I trust what has been revealed and I act on it. If you are in agreement with this shift, if you are ready to break every pattern of delay and step into unstoppable momentum, I want you to open the comment section and type, "No more delay. My time is now." Let that be your declaration, your alignment, your visible agreement with the authority you are stepping into. And as you type it, You reinforce it within yourself and release it into the atmosphere around you. I continue to stand in this posture of authority, this awareness of alignment, this confidence in divine timing. I do not look at what tried to slow me down. I look at what is now moving me forward. I do not focus on what resisted me. I focus on what is now responding to my alignment. I step into this new month with a clear understanding that delay has been canceled, stagnation has been broken, and progress is not only possible, it is inevitable. As I continue to move in agreement with God's purpose and timing, I become aware in this moment that the battlefield is often internal before it is ever external, that what tries to disturb my peace does not always come from outside, but can rise within as thoughts, emotions, and subtle pressures that attempt to shift my focus and weaken my clarity. And I refuse to allow my mind to become a place of confusion. I refuse to allow my peace to be negotiated. I refuse to allow my emotions to be controlled by anything that is not aligned with God. I step into a place of calm authority where my mind is steady, my heart is anchored, and my spirit is aligned with truth. There have been moments where thoughts tried to crowd in, where worry attempted to take root, where overthinking created noise that made it difficult to hear clearly. But I recognize that not every thought deserves my attention, not every feeling deserves my agreement, and not every internal voice deserves to be believed. I take authority over my mind. I become intentional about what I entertain, and I begin to filter everything through the truth of who I am and what God has spoken over me. The word reminds me in 2 Timothy 1:7 that God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And I receive that fully, not as something distant, but as something present within me right now. That means fear does not belong here. Confusion does not belong here. Instability does not belong here. What belongs here is power. What belongs here is love. What belongs here is a mind that is clear, focused, and disciplined. And I align myself with that reality. I declare that every attack against my peace is dismantled. Every attempt to disturb my inner stability is canceled. Every wave of anxiety, every trace of fear, every form of mental pressure that tries to rise against me is brought into alignment with truth. I do not allow it to grow. I do not allow it to linger. I do not allow it to define my state. I release calm into my mind. I release clarity into my thoughts. I release stability into my emotions. I create an environment within me where peace is not occasional, it is consistent. I also become aware that my focus is powerful, that what I give my attention to grows in influence. And so I become intentional about where my focus goes. I do not dwell on what could go wrong. I dwell on what God is doing right. I do not fixate on uncertainty. I fix my attention on truth. I do not replay negative scenarios. I rehearse positive outcomes that are aligned with purpose. My focus becomes a tool that I use to strengthen my clarity rather than weaken my confidence. The word declares in Isaiah 26:3 that God will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are stayed on him. And I hold on to that promise as I align my thoughts. That means peace is not random. It is the result of focus. When my mind is centered, when my thoughts are aligned, when my attention is directed toward God, peace becomes the natural outcome. And so I train my mind to return to that center again and again, no matter what tries to pull me away. There is a calm strength that begins to settle within me, a quiet confidence that does not depend on external conditions, but is rooted in internal alignment. I am not shaken by what I see. I am not overwhelmed by what I hear. I am not disturbed by what I feel. I remain steady, grounded, anchored. And from that place, I make decisions, I take action, I move forward with clarity. I do not rush because I am anxious. I move because I am aligned. I also recognize that emotional stability is not about suppressing what I feel. It is about understanding it without being controlled by it. I allow myself to process, to reflect, to acknowledge, but I do not allow my emotions to take the lead. I lead with truth. I lead with clarity. I lead with purpose. My emotions follow my alignment. They do not dictate my direction. And as I practice this, I become more grounded, more balanced, more centered in who I am. There may have been times where confusion tried to cloud my judgment, where uncertainty made decisions feel difficult, where doubt tried to creep in quietly. But I address that directly. I reject confusion. I reject doubt. I reject every form of mental fog that tries to obscure my vision. I declare that my mind is clear, that my thoughts are ordered, that my decisions are guided. I trust the clarity that God is providing, and I move forward with confidence. If this resonates with you, If you are ready to take authority over your mind and walk in peace and clarity, I want you to gently open the comment section and type, "My mind is clear and at peace." Let that be your declaration, your moment of agreement, your intentional step toward reinforcing what you are choosing to walk in. Because when you put it into words, you strengthen it within yourself. I continue to remain in this state of calm awareness, this steady alignment, this quiet confidence that knows I am not at the mercy of my thoughts. I am the steward of them. I choose what I think. I choose what I believe. I choose what I focus on, and as I make those choices in alignment with truth, my peace becomes unshakable, my clarity becomes consistent, and my focus becomes a powerful force that directs my life in a way that reflects purpose, stability, and divine alignment. I become aware in this moment that my financial life is not separate from my spiritual alignment, that provision is not random, and that lack is not something I am designed to accept as normal. There are patterns that try to define how far I can go, limits that attempt to suggest what is possible and what is not. But I refuse to accept any limitation that did not come from God. I recognize that provision has a source, and that source is not uncertainty, not fear, not human systems alone, but God Himself, who is consistent, faithful, and intentional about meeting every need. And so I align myself with that source. I align my thinking, my expectations, and my declarations with the reality of divine provision. There may have been moments where lack felt close, where resources felt stretched, where opportunities seemed limited, but I do not allow those moments to define my identity or my future. I do not internalize scarcity. I do not agree with insufficiency. I do not build my expectations around what is missing. Instead, I shift my awareness toward what is possible when I am aligned with God's provision. I begin to see differently, to think differently, to expect differently. I recognize that what I focus on grows, and so I choose to focus on provision rather than lack, on opportunity rather than limitation, on increase rather than restriction. The word reminds me in Philippians 4:19 that God will supply all my needs according to His riches in glory, and I receive that as a present truth. That means I am not dependent on uncertain sources. I am connected to a source that does not run out, that does not fluctuate, that does not fail. Every need I have is already known, already accounted for, already provided for in ways that may not yet be visible but are already in motion. And I align my expectation with that truth. I do not worry about how, I trust who, I do not stress about when. I remain in alignment with what God is doing. I declare that every cycle of financial struggle is broken. Every pattern of lack that has tried to repeat itself loses its hold. Every mindset of scarcity that has tried to influence my decisions is replaced with a mindset of abundance. I do not carry forward any limitation that was not assigned to me. I release every belief that says there is not enough, that opportunities are limited, that provision is uncertain. I replace those beliefs with truth, with clarity, with confidence in God's ability to provide in ways that go beyond what I can calculate or predict. There is also a shift happening in how I see opportunity. I begin to recognize that opportunities are not always obvious, that sometimes they come in forms that require discernment, attention, and willingness to act. And so I position myself to be aware, to be attentive, to be ready. I do not overlook what God is placing in front of me. I do not hesitate when clarity is given. I do not delay when action is required. I move with wisdom, with discernment, with a readiness that aligns with the flow of provision. The word declares in Deuteronomy 8:18 that it is God who gives me the power to get wealth, and I hold on to that understanding as I move forward. That means my ability, my creativity, my ideas, my strategies are not random. They are empowered. There is a capacity within me that is designed to produce, to create, to generate, to multiply. And I begin to recognize and activate that capacity. I do not underestimate what I carry. I do not overlook the potential within me. I do not dismiss the ideas that come to me. I pay attention, I develop them, I act on them with wisdom and consistency. There is also a discipline that comes with alignment, a responsibility that comes with provision. I become intentional about how I manage what I receive, how I steward what is placed in my hands, how I make decisions that reflect wisdom rather than impulse. I understand that provision is not just about receiving, it is about managing, multiplying, and aligning with purpose. And so I bring order into my financial life. I remove confusion. I remove disorder. I remove any habit that does not support growth and stability. I replace it with clarity, with structure, with intentional action. I also release any fear connected to finances, any anxiety about the future, any pressure that tries to create urgency without clarity. I understand that fear disrupts flow, that anxiety clouds judgment, that pressure can lead to misaligned decisions. And so I choose calm, I choose clarity, I choose alignment. I trust that as I remain aligned with God, I will be guided into the right opportunities, the right decisions, the right connections that support growth and provision. There is an expansion happening, not just externally, but internally. My thinking is expanding. My expectations are expanding. My capacity is expanding. I no longer think in terms of just enough. I think in terms of overflow. I no longer focus on survival. I focus on growth. I no longer limit what is possible based on past experiences. I align with what God is able to do. And as my thinking expands, my actions begin to reflect that expansion. I step into new opportunities. I explore new ideas. I move with confidence into spaces that align with increase. If you are in agreement with this shift, if you are ready to break every cycle of lack and step into provision and overflow, I want you to gently open the comment section and type, "I walk in divine provision." Let that be your declaration, your agreement, your intentional step of faith that reinforces what you are choosing to align with. And as you type it, you create a moment of clarity that strengthens your expectation and positions you to recognize what God is releasing into your life. I continue to remain in this alignment, this awareness that provision is not distant, it is present, that opportunities are not limited, they are available, that increase is not impossible, it is already in motion. I move forward with confidence, with clarity, with a calm assurance that my needs are met, that my path is supported, and that everything required for my life and purpose is being provided in ways that reflect divine wisdom, divine timing, and divine abundance. I become aware in this moment that words carry weight far beyond what is heard in the natural, that every word spoken, whether in public or in secret, has the potential to shape outcomes, influence direction, and create alignment either with truth or with distortion. And I refuse to allow any word that was not aligned with God to have authority over my life. I refuse to give power to anything that was spoken from negativity, fear, jealousy, or misunderstanding. I recognize that not every voice deserves access, not every statement deserves agreement, and not every declaration deserves to remain active in my life. I take my position with calm authority, and I begin to address every word that has tried to attach itself to my identity, my future, and my purpose. There have been words spoken that attempted to define me, to limit me, to reduce what God has placed inside of me. Words that tried to create doubt, words that tried to introduce fear, words that attempted to establish boundaries where God had given freedom. And even if those words were spoken casually, even if they were spoken in passing, I recognize that they do not have permission to remain. I do not carry them forward. I do not replay them. I do not internalize them. I release them completely, and I remove their influence from my thinking, from my emotions, and from my expectations. The word reminds me in Proverbs 18:21 that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and I understand that this is not symbolic. It is practical. It is active. It is real. That means words have the ability to build or to break, to release or to restrict, to align or to misalign, and I choose to align myself with life. I choose to align myself with words that build, that strengthen, that clarify, that empower. I do not allow words of death, words of limitation, words of negativity to have any place in my life. I declare that every negative word spoken against me is reversed. Every curse, every harmful declaration, every statement that was designed to weaken or to hinder is rendered powerless. I do not accept it. I do not agree with it. I do not allow it to remain active. I release a canceling into every word that does not align with God's truth. I neutralize its effect. I dismantle its influence. I remove its access. And in its place, I release words of truth, words of clarity, words of life that align with who I am and where I am going. I also become aware of the words I have spoken over myself, the internal dialogue that has been repeated, sometimes without even realizing it. And I take responsibility for that. I recognize that my own words carry power, that what I say about myself can either align me with truth or pull me away from it. And so I begin to shift that internal dialogue. I replace every negative statement with a positive one, every limiting belief with an empowering truth, every doubt-filled thought with a confident declaration. I become intentional about speaking life over myself, over my situation, over my future. The word declares in Isaiah 55:11 that God's word will not return void, but will accomplish what it is sent to do, and I align myself with that principle. That means when I speak in agreement with God's word, those words carry effectiveness, they carry purpose, they carry the ability to produce results. And so I fill my words with alignment, with truth, with intention. I speak what I want to see. I declare what I am aligning with. I release words that support the direction I am moving in. There is also a quiet confidence that begins to rise as I become more aware of the power of my words. I no longer speak casually about my life. I no longer make light of what I say. I no longer allow negativity to slip through without correction. I speak with awareness, with intention, with alignment. My words become consistent with my purpose, consistent with my direction, consistent with what I am building. I understand that every word is a seed, and I become intentional about the seeds I plant. I also recognize that there may be words that were spoken in moments of emotion, in times of frustration, in situations where clarity was not present. And I address those as well. I release them, I cancel them, I refuse to allow them to continue producing results that do not align with truth. I replace them with new declarations, with corrected statements, with aligned words that reflect what I truly want to see. I do not remain bound to what was spoken in a moment of weakness. I step into what I can declare from a place of strength and clarity. There is a shift happening in how I listen as well. I become more discerning about the voices I allow into my life, the conversations I engage with, the environments I place myself in. I recognize that what I hear influences what I think, and what I think influences what I say. And so I become selective. I become intentional. I become aware. I surround myself with words that build, that encourage, that align with truth. I reduce exposure to negativity, to doubt, to anything that attempts to pull me away from clarity and confidence. If you are in agreement with this alignment, if you are ready to cancel every negative word and speak life over yourself and your future, I want you to gently open the comment section and type, "I speak life over my life." Let that be your declaration, your agreement, your intentional act of aligning your words with truth, because when you put it into words, you reinforce it within yourself and begin to see its effect in your life. I continue to stand in this awareness that my words matter, that what I speak has direction, that what I declare has influence. I do not speak randomly. I speak intentionally. I do not speak from fear. I speak from faith. I do not speak from limitation. I speak from alignment. And as I continue to align my words with truth, I create an environment where life is released, where clarity is strengthened, where purpose is supported, and where every declaration I make moves me further into alignment with what God has already established for me. I become aware in this moment that my life is not isolated, that what touches me often attempts to touch those connected to me, that my family, my loved ones, and everything within my sphere carries value, purpose, and divine significance. And I refuse to allow anything harmful, anything unauthorized, anything misaligned to gain access to them. I step into a place of covering, not out of fear, but out of awareness, not out of anxiety, but out of authority. I recognize that protection is not passive. It is intentional. It is declared. It is established through alignment with God's presence and his promises. There are connections in my life that matter deeply, relationships that are part of my assignment, people who are part of my journey, and I do not take that lightly. I become intentional about how I pray, how I speak, how I think concerning them. I do not assume they are covered. I actively release covering. I do not wait for something to happen. I establish protection before anything attempts to arise. I become proactive. I become aware. I become aligned with the responsibility of covering what has been entrusted to me. The word reminds me in Psalm 91:11 that God gives his angels charge over me to keep me in all my ways, and I extend that understanding to everything connected to me. That means there is divine protection available. There is a covering that is already established. There is a guarding presence that surrounds, that watches, that preserves. And I align myself with that reality. I do not question it. I do not doubt it. I step into agreement with it, and I declare it over my life and over every person connected to me. I declare that no plan of harm will penetrate this covering. No hidden agenda will find access. No negative intention will succeed. I establish a boundary in the spirit, a line that cannot be crossed, a covering that cannot be broken. I release peace into my household. I release stability into every relationship. I release harmony into every connection. I remove every influence that attempts to create division, confusion, or disruption. I replace it with clarity, with understanding, with alignment. There may have been moments where tension tried to rise, where misunderstandings tried to form, where distance tried to grow, but I address that directly. I do not allow small things to grow into larger issues. I do not allow silence to create distance. I do not allow assumptions to replace communication. I bring clarity. I bring intention. I bring alignment into every relationship that matters. I become a source of stability, a source of calm, a source of clarity within my environment. The word declares in Isaiah 32:18 that my people will dwell in a peaceful habitation, in secure dwellings, and in quiet resting places. And I hold on to that promise as I cover my household and my loved ones. That means peace is not just an idea. It is a reality that can be established, that can be maintained, that can be experienced consistently. And I align with that peace. I release it into my environment. I speak it into my surroundings. I create space for it to remain. I also become aware of the importance of presence, of being intentional about how I show up for the people in my life. I do not become distant. I do not become disconnected. I do not become distracted. I remain present. I remain aware. I remain engaged. I listen. I understand. I support. I create an environment where trust can grow, where communication can flow, where connection can deepen. I understand that protection is not only spiritual, it is also relational. It is built through consistency, through presence, through intention. There is also a strengthening happening, a reinforcement of the bonds that matter, a deepening of the connections that are aligned with purpose. I recognize that not every connection is meant to continue, but those that are aligned, are strengthened, are supported, are covered. I do not hold on to what is not aligned, but I invest in what is. I nurture what matters. I protect what is valuable. I honor what has been entrusted to me. I also release any fear concerning my loved ones, any anxiety about what could happen, any worry about what is beyond my control. I understand that fear does not protect, it disturbs. Anxiety does not cover, it distracts. And so I replace fear with faith, anxiety with alignment, worry with trust. I trust that God is covering what I cannot see, that He is guarding what I cannot control, that He is present even when I am not aware. If you are in agreement with this covering, if you are ready to declare protection over your family and your loved ones, I want you to gently open the comment section and type, "My family is covered and protégé." Let that be your declaration, your agreement, your intentional act of releasing covering over everything connected to you. Because when you declare it, you align with it and reinforce it in your environment. I continue to remain in this posture of covering, this awareness of responsibility, this alignment with protection. I do not leave anything exposed. I do not leave anything unaddressed. I do not assume anything is automatically secured. I declare, I align, I establish, and as I do, I create an environment where peace remains, where protection is active, where relationships are strengthened, and where everything connected to me is covered, guarded, and aligned with divine order and purpose. I become aware in this moment that faith is not just a belief I carry. It is a force I live by, a foundation I stand on, a connection that aligns me with God's presence and His purpose. And I recognize that there are moments where that faith is tested, where pressure attempts to weaken it, where distractions attempt to pull it away from its center. But I refuse to allow anything to weaken what has been established within me. I refuse to let my faith become passive. I refuse to let it become distant. I refuse to let it be reduced to something occasional. I step into a place of intentional strengthening where my faith is active, alive, and anchored deeply in truth. There have been moments where challenges arose, where situations felt uncertain, where outcomes were not immediately clear. And in those moments, it would have been easy to shift into doubt, to question what I believe, to hesitate in what I know. But I recognize that faith is not dependent on what I see. It is rooted in what I know to be true. It is not shaken by circumstances. It is strengthened through them. And so I choose to stand firm, to remain steady, to hold on to what I know, even when I do not fully understand what is happening around me. The word reminds me in Hebrews 11, One, that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, and I align myself with that understanding. That means faith is not empty. It has substance, it has weight, it has reality, even when it is not visible. It is evidence, it is assurance, it is confidence in what is already established in the unseen. And I choose to live from that place, to trust what I cannot see, to believe what has already been spoken, to stand on what has already been promised. I declare that every attack assigned to weaken my faith is canceled. Every attempt to introduce doubt, every strategy designed to create uncertainty, every influence that tries to pull me away from alignment is dismantled. I do not entertain it. I do not engage with it. I do not give it space. I remain anchored. I remain grounded. I remain aligned. My faith is not fragile. It is resilient. It is not temporary. It is consistent. It is not easily shaken. It is firmly established. I also become aware that faith grows through consistency, through intentional connection, through daily alignment. It is not something that develops once and remains unchanged. It is something that is strengthened through practice, through attention, through engagement. And so I become intentional about how I nurture my faith. I create space for reflection, for prayer, for alignment. I feed my spirit with truth. I surround myself with words that build, that strengthen, that reinforce what I believe. The word declares in Romans 10:17 that faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God, and I align myself with that principle. That means what I listen to matters, what I allow into my mind matters, what I expose myself to matters. And so I become selective, I become intentional, I become aware. I choose to listen to what builds my faith, to what strengthens my confidence, to what aligns me with truth. I reduce exposure to anything that introduces doubt, that weakens my clarity, that distracts me from what I know to be true. There is also a deepening happening within me, a strengthening that goes beyond surface level belief into a rooted, grounded, unshakable confidence. I am not easily moved. I am not easily distracted. I am not easily discouraged. I remain steady. I remain focused. I remain aligned. And from that place, I move forward with clarity, with confidence, with a calm assurance that what I am believing for is already in motion. I also recognize that faith requires action, that it is not just something I think or feel, it is something I live out. And so I align my actions with my belief. I make decisions that reflect my faith. I take steps that align with what I am trusting for. I move forward even when I do not have all the answers. I do not wait for complete clarity. I move with the clarity I have. I do not hesitate because of uncertainty. I act because of alignment. There may have been moments where doubt tried to whisper quietly, where uncertainty tried to linger, where hesitation tried to slow me down, but I address that directly. I reject doubt. I reject hesitation. I reject anything that tries to weaken my faith. I replace it with confidence, with clarity, with alignment. I remind myself of what I know, of what I have seen, of what has already been established. I strengthen my faith by returning to truth again and again. If you are in agreement with this strengthening, if you are ready to stand firm and grow deeper in your faith, I want you to gently open the comment section and type, "My faith is strong and unstoppable." Let that be your declaration, your agreement, your intentional act of reinforcing what you are choosing to walk in. Because when you declare it, you strengthen it within yourself and align yourself with its manifestation. I continue to remain in this state of alignment, this deep, steady confidence that my faith is not under threat. It is under construction. It is growing. It is strengthening. It is becoming more refined. I do not fear challenges. I understand that they are opportunities for growth. I do not avoid pressure. I recognize that it reveals strength. I move forward with a calm assurance that my faith is anchored, that my connection is strong, and that nothing assigned to weaken me will succeed as I continue to stand, to believe, and to remain aligned with truth. I become aware in this moment that confusion is not just a lack of clarity. It is often a strategy, a subtle attempt to distort direction, to delay decisions, and to weaken confidence. It does not always come loudly. Sometimes it appears as overthinking, as second guessing, as a constant shifting between options that leaves me feeling uncertain and stuck. But I refuse to live in that space. I refuse to allow confusion to have authority over my mind, my decisions, or my direction. I step into a place of clarity, of precision, of steady alignment with God's wisdom that brings order where there was once uncertainty. There have been moments where I felt pulled in different directions, where choices seemed unclear, where I questioned whether I was moving the right way. And in those moments, it would have been easy to pause, to delay, to avoid making decisions altogether. But I recognize that hesitation can sometimes be a form of agreement with confusion, and I choose differently now. I choose to trust that clarity is available, that direction is being revealed, that I am not left to navigate blindly. I align myself with the understanding that God is intentional, that He leads with purpose, and that He does not guide in confusion. The word reminds me in 1 Corinthians 14:33 that God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, and I hold on to that truth as a foundation for my thinking. That means anything that creates chaos, uncertainty, or instability is not aligned with God's nature, and I do not accept what is not aligned. I release every form of confusion, every clouded thought, every mixed signal that tries to disrupt my clarity. I bring my mind back into alignment with peace, with order, with understanding. I declare that my path is clear. I declare that my decisions are guided. I declare that every step I take is aligned with purpose and direction. I do not move randomly. I do not act impulsively. I do not respond out of pressure. I move with intention. I act with awareness. I respond with clarity. I trust that as I remain aligned, the next step will be revealed, and then the next, and then the next. I do not need to see everything at once. I only need to see what is required for now. There is a calm confidence that begins to settle within me as I release the need to control every outcome. I recognize that clarity does not always come in full pictures. Sometimes it comes in steps, in moments, in small insights that build over time. And I become comfortable with that process. I do not rush it. I do not resist it. I flow with it. I trust that what I need to know will be revealed when I need to know it, and that I am being guided in ways that are precise, intentional, and aligned with my purpose. The word declares in Proverbs 3:5-6 that I should trust in the Lord with all my heart and lean not on my own understanding, and that as I acknowledge Him, He will direct my paths, and I align myself with that instruction. That means I do not rely solely on my own reasoning. I do not depend only on what I can analyze or calculate. I remain open. I remain receptive. I remain aligned with a guidance that goes beyond what I can fully comprehend. And as I do, direction becomes clearer, decisions become easier, and movement becomes more confident. I also become intentional about removing distractions, about creating space for clarity to emerge. I recognize that noise can interfere with direction, that too many voices can create confusion, that constant input can cloud judgment. And so I simplify. I quiet what needs to be quieted. I reduce what needs to be reduced. I focus on what matters. I create an environment where clarity can rise, where understanding can settle, where direction can become evident. There is also a strengthening of trust happening within me, a deeper reliance on God's guidance rather than my own need for certainty. I do not need to have every detail figured out. I do not need to predict every outcome. I do not need to control every step. I trust that I am being led, that I am being guided, that I am being positioned. And from that place of trust, I move forward with confidence, with peace, with a steady assurance that I am not alone in this process. I also recognize that clarity requires action, that sometimes understanding comes as I move, not before I move. And so I take steps, I make decisions, I engage with what is in front of me. I do not remain stuck waiting for perfect clarity. I move with the clarity I have. And as I move, more becomes clear, more is revealed, more is understood. I trust the process. I trust the progression. I trust the unfolding. If you are in agreement with this alignment, if you are ready to reject confusion and walk in clear direction and divine strategy, I want you to gently open the comment section and type, "I walk in divine clarity." Let that be your declaration, your agreement, your intentional act of aligning your mind and your path with clarity. Because when you declare it, you strengthen it within yourself and position yourself to recognize the direction that is already being revealed. I continue to remain in this state of clarity, this calm and steady awareness that I am guided, that I am directed, that I am aligned. I do not fear decisions. I embrace them. I do not avoid movement. I engage with it. I do not question my path endlessly. I trust the guidance I am receiving. And as I continue to move in this alignment, confusion loses its influence, clarity becomes consistent, and my path unfolds with precision, purpose, and a quiet confidence that reflects divine direction. I become aware in this moment that delay is not always visible, that sometimes it hides behind circumstances, behind timing that feels uncertain, behind doors that seem closed without explanation. But I refuse to accept delay as my permanent reality. I refuse to normalize waiting without movement, and I refuse to allow anything that has been held back to remain restricted. I step into a place of authority where I recognize that progress is not accidental, it is aligned, it is intentional, and it is something I can step into with clarity and confidence. I do not approach this passively. I approach it with awareness, with understanding, with a willingness to move forward in alignment with what God is already doing. There have been moments where I felt like I was ready, where I knew I had prepared, where I sensed that something should have shifted, yet nothing seemed to change. And in those moments, it would have been easy to become discouraged, to question whether progress was possible, to wonder if something was wrong. But I shift my perspective. I recognize that what appears delayed is not always denied, and what seems still may actually be in motion beneath the surface. I refuse to let appearances define my expectation, and I align myself with a deeper understanding that God's timing is precise, intentional, and always purposeful. The word reminds me in Ecclesiastes 3. One, that to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, and I align myself with that truth. That means timing matters, alignment matters, readiness matters. But it also means that when the time is right, movement happens, doors open, progress is released, and I position myself for that release. I do not remain stuck in past timing. I step into present alignment. I become aware of what is now, of what is shifting, of what is being prepared for release. I declare that every delay in my progress is broken. Every restriction that has held back my movement is removed. Every unseen barrier that has limited my advancement is dismantled. I do not negotiate with delay. I do not tolerate stagnation. I do not accept limitation. I release a clear and decisive declaration that what has been held back is now being released. I align myself with forward movement, with open doors, with opportunities that reflect divine timing rather than human delay. There is also a shift happening within me, a renewal of expectation, a strengthening of confidence. I no longer expect things to remain the same. I no longer assume that nothing will change. I no longer prepare myself for disappointment. Instead, I align my expectation with progress, with movement, with advancement. I begin to see possibilities where I once saw obstacles. I begin to recognize opportunities where I once saw limitations. My perspective shifts, and as my perspective shifts, my experience begins to shift as well. The word declares in Amos 9:13 that the days are coming when things will happen so quickly that it will feel like one thing is overtaking another. And I hold on to that promise as I move forward. That means acceleration is possible, that progress can come in ways that exceed expectation, that what felt slow can suddenly become swift. And I align myself with that acceleration. I do not limit what is possible based on past experiences. I open myself to what God is able to do in this moment. I also become intentional about my actions, about how I respond to opportunities, about how I move when doors begin to open. I do not hesitate. I do not second guess. I do not delay my own progress through indecision. I move with clarity, with readiness, with a willingness to step into what is being presented. I understand that progress requires participation, that movement requires action, that opportunities must be engaged with. And so I position myself to act, to respond, to move forward with confidence. There is also a release of anything that has been weighing me down, anything that has been slowing me, anything that has been holding me in place. I let go of hesitation. I release doubt. I remove anything that does not support forward movement. I lighten my load. I simplify my focus. I align myself with what is necessary for progress. I do not carry unnecessary weight. I do not hold on to what no longer serves me. I move forward with clarity and intention. I also recognize that progress is not always dramatic, that sometimes it comes in steady, consistent steps that build over time. And I become comfortable with that. I do not rush the process. I do not force outcomes. I remain aligned with the flow of movement that is unfolding. I trust that every step matters, that every action contributes, that every moment of alignment moves me forward. I remain consistent. I remain focused. I remain engaged with the process. If you are in agreement with this release, if you are ready to see every delay broken and every door open in alignment with your purpose, I want you to gently open the comment section and type, "My delays are broken. My doors are open." Let that be your declaration, your agreement, your intentional step of faith that reinforces what you are aligning with, because when you declare it, you strengthen your expectation and position yourself to recognize the progress that is already beginning. I continue to remain in this posture of forward movement, this awareness that progress is active, that doors are opening, that opportunities are aligning. I do not look back at what was delayed. I look forward to what is now being released. I do not focus on what was restricted. I focus on what is now accessible. I move with confidence, with clarity, with a calm assurance that what has been held back is now moving forward, that what has been delayed is now being released, and that every step I take is aligned with a progression that reflects divine timing, divine order, and purposeful advancement. I become aware in this moment that authority is not something I chase. It is something I carry, something that has already been given, something that becomes evident when I choose to stand in alignment with who I am and what God has established. I am not here to react to everything that happens around me. I am here to respond with clarity, with intention, with a steady confidence that understands my position. I refuse to live in reaction. I refuse to be driven by circumstances. I refuse to allow external conditions to dictate my internal state. I step into dominion, not as force, not as control, but as alignment with divine order that allows me to move with purpose and precision. There have been moments where it felt easier to react, to respond quickly to pressure, to allow emotions to guide decisions, to let situations determine my posture. But I recognize that reaction often comes from uncertainty, while authority comes from clarity. And I choose clarity. I choose to pause, to become aware, to respond intentionally rather than impulsively. I do not allow situations to pull me out of alignment. I remain grounded. I remain steady. I remain anchored in truth. And from that place, I move with confidence, with awareness, with control over how I respond. The word reminds me in Luke 10:19 that authority has been given to me to overcome all the power of the enemy, and I receive that as a present reality. That means I am not powerless. I am not vulnerable. I am not subject to every opposing force. I have been given the ability to stand, to resist, to overcome, and I choose to walk in that authority. I do not shrink back. I do not hesitate. I do not doubt what has been placed within me. I stand firm. I stand aware. I stand aligned with the authority that has already been established. I declare that I do not react to darkness. I command outcomes aligned with light. I do not respond out of fear. I respond out of clarity. I do not move based on pressure. I move based on purpose. Every situation I encounter, every challenge I face, every moment that requires a decision, I approach it from a place of dominion. I do not allow confusion to influence me. I do not allow fear to guide me. I do not allow uncertainty to control me. I remain steady. I remain focused. I remain aligned. There is also a shift happening within me, a deeper awareness of my role, of my responsibility, of my position. I am not just observing what is happening around me. I am influencing it through my alignment, through my decisions, through my presence. I recognize that how I show up matters, that how I respond matters, that how I think and speak matters. And I become intentional about all of it. I align my thoughts with clarity, my words with truth, my actions with purpose. The word declares in Genesis 1:28 that I am called to have dominion, and I hold on to that calling as I move forward. That means I am not here to be overwhelmed. I am here to steward, to manage, to lead. I take responsibility for my environment, for my decisions, for my direction. I do not avoid responsibility. I embrace it. I understand that dominion is not about control over everything. It is about alignment within myself that allows me to influence what is around me in a way that reflects order and purpose. I also become aware that authority is expressed through consistency, through the way I carry myself, through the way I handle situations over time. It is not something that appears once. It is something that is demonstrated continuously. And so I commit to consistency. I remain aligned in my thinking, aligned in my speaking, aligned in my actions. I do not shift based on circumstances. I remain steady regardless of what is happening around me. My consistency becomes a reflection of my authority. There is also a calm confidence that develops as I step more fully into this alignment. I do not feel the need to prove anything. I do not feel the need to force outcomes. I do not feel the need to control every detail. I trust that as I remain aligned, things will respond accordingly. I move with ease, with clarity, with a quiet assurance that knows I am positioned correctly. I do not rush. I do not hesitate. I simply move in alignment with what is required. I also recognize that authority requires awareness, that I must remain attentive to what is happening, to what is shifting, to what requires a response. I do not become passive. I remain engaged. I observe. I discern. I respond. I do not ignore what needs